Before I moved to Da Nang, I lived in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Rock-solid fiber internet and a great one-bedroom condominium apartment with pool and gym, all just for 2,200 ringgit a month. Tons of great eateries, a high level of spoken English, and it's genuinely affordable day to day. By every metric one would use to choose a base, Kuala Lumpur should be up there. The city should be swarming with remote workers, yet it isn't. Why is that? Walk through Bangsar South on a Tuesday afternoon and you'll find local office workers on a lunch break, not nomads with their laptops. Now compare that to Chiang Mai or Bali, or even the city I'm in right now, Da Nang. Slower internet in places, more bureaucratic hoops to live there, beaches that flood in the monsoon season, and these are still the cities that show up on every best places for digital nomads list year after year. If this was really about infrastructure and lifestyle, Kuala Lumpur would win by a mile. So why doesn't it? It isn't really about the cities at all. It's about the accessibility and the behind-the-scenes systems that actually make a place livable long-term. And that's exactly the stuff most people never think about to research before they book their flight. Let's start out with the most obvious barrier to entry there is. Can you actually stay there long term? Every one of the big nomad hubs has found their own answer to that question, and none of them look the same. Thailand rolled out the Destination Thailand Visa, the DTV, in 2024. Have a total of 500,000 baht in your bank account, roughly 15,000 US dollars in savings that is, and you get 5 years of entry with stays of up to 6 months at a time. That's about as close to move in and don't think about it again as Southeast Asia gets. Bali runs on the opposite model. Indonesia's E33G remote worker visa demands proof of $60,000 a year in foreign salary before you can even apply. It's not built for freelancers cobbling together clients, it's built to filter for people already earning corporate money, and that's exactly what its design is meant to select for. Then there's Vietnam, which has no nomad visa of any kind. Officially, I'm here on a 90-day e-visa, just like any other tourist. But unofficially, there is an entire industry built around circumventing the limits of that 90-day visa. We can start off with the folks that deal with that issue directly. A common solution for them is to pay an agency about $100. At 5 in the morning, they drive out to the Lao Bao border crossing about 200 kilometers from here. A guide meets them, walks the paperwork through, walks them across the border, they pull a 180 and walk right back across. And roughly 4 hours later, they're back in Da Nang with yet another fresh 90-day stamp. It's not legal in the sense that it's a purpose-built visa, it's legal in the sense that this process is tolerated. To the point there's an entire commercial ecosystem that exists to enable people to bridge this bureaucratic gap and make this problem disappear for a fee. 3 countries, 3 completely different philosophies for approaching livability as a modern digital nomad, yet they all serve the same underlying function. They've each found their own way to make "can I stay long enough to build a life here?" a solved problem. That's gate number 1. That's barrier number 1. And it's the one most people researching a move don't even think to check until they've already committed. And what about you, dear viewer? Have you ever lived somewhere that forces you into regular border runs? Let me know down in the comments below. Real quick though, if you're enjoying this kind of content where we take a more nuanced and in-depth look at the modern nomad experience and would like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Appreciate it. Now, passing that first gate of entry isn't the whole story. There is, of course, a second gate. And in my experience, once people tend to pass that second gate, they also tend to stay. Now here's a question that actually matters. If Da Nang and Chiang Mai are slowly getting so much more expensive, why do people tend to still stay there? Why don't folks just move to a cheaper, maybe even quieter location instead? Logically, they should, but in practice, hardly anyone ever does. And of course, there's a real economic reason for that. Because once enough remote workers land in one place and reach a critical mass, bringing real money into the local economy, that economy begins to organize themselves around them. Real estate agents start operating in English, landlords start accepting short-term leases without blinking, and cafes install specific plug sockets people working with laptops actually need. None of this happens because a government planned it. It happens because enough people showed up that it became profitable for locals to build for them. That means that the first mover advantage compounds. A new arrival in Chiang Mai can find a furnished apartment, a co-working desk, and a decent flat within a few hours of landing. Someone trying to do the same thing in a city without that same infrastructure is doing all of that from scratch alone. There's also a simpler network effect underneath all of this. The other nomads themselves. Once enough people are already there, you get instant access to others who've already solved the exact problems you're about to hit. Which landlord won't scam you, which agent is actually reliable, which cafe has Wi-Fi that doesn't drop mid-call. That kind of knowledge passes from person to person, and it's worth more than any guide you can read beforehand. Cambodia is the clearest version of what, from scratch and alone, actually looks like. Phnom Penh is cheap on paper, accessible, but it runs on a cash economy split between US dollars and the Cambodian riel. And vendors will flat out reject a dollar bill if it's torn or too worn. As well as that, ATMs will charge foreign cards $4 to $6 for a single withdrawal. And if you want to work legally, you're not just extending a visa, you're getting a company to sponsor a labor ministry work permit capped at 10% of their total headcount. That's not just lifestyle inconvenience, that's an absolute wall cutting you off from a path forward. So it's not that any of these cities are uniquely beautiful themselves. It's the infrastructure that's built up over time that serves these nomads. And without that same structure, you'd be paying every one of these costs yourself in cash, alone, with no one to ask. Once you see that, you begin to understand why everyone ends up in the same 5 already established places, even ones that are no longer as affordable as they used to be. They're simply easier and more comfortable to get established and stay in. So back to Kuala Lumpur. Great infrastructure and dirt cheap, yet still functionally empty of nomads. So if my theory holds, there should be a way to prove that it actually was never about the city itself. Well, there actually is, because in October of 2022, Malaysia launched a visa called the DE Rantau. It was a legal and renewable 1-year work pass for remote workers with an income of above 24,000 US dollars a year. That's low enough that actual freelancers could apply, not just corporate employees. Nothing else about Kuala Lumpur changed. Same fiber internet, same cheap condos, same malls. The only variable that moved was whether you could legally and easily stay. Within that same year, Kuala Lumpur went from the 84th to 22nd place on Remote.com's ranking of the best destinations for remote work. By the end of 2023, Nomad List had ranked Malaysia the single most liked countries among digital nomads worldwide. A single policy lever flipped. Everyone who had been wanting to stay there gained easy legal permission, and that led to a near instant cultural shift, primarily due to the now increased accessibility. That's about as close to a controlled experiment as economic geography can get, and it lines up exactly with our friction thesis that we've been discussing so far. Infrastructure was never the issue, permission was. This is actually a phenomenon that you can find outside of Southeast Asia as well. In fact, Lisbon has its own D8 visa that functions very similarly, and Mexico has its temporary resident visa that functions identically as well. Despite being on different continents, both mechanisms aim to do the exact same thing, and that is to reduce friction, and nomad infrastructure clusters form immediately. Despite all of that good news, there are unfortunately still some things to be concerned about, and that's because the direction that all of this is flowing is towards higher income thresholds. Bali wants $60,000 a year for entry. Lisbon wants 4,000 euros a month. These visas are increasingly built for salaried professionals and not the broke freelancers who are just trying to find their way. So yes, the identities of these top cities are not fixed, but rather it's whose policies create the least amount of friction for the people who actually want to live there. Unfortunately, the next question for all of this isn't which city is next, but rather who is getting priced out of the system entirely. Now, if you picked your home base for reasons that have nothing at all to do with visa math, I'd love to know what exactly your reasons are. Leave them down in the comments below. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you've liked it, consider subscribing, maybe even hit the like button. But as always, thank you for watching and take care.